I guess to start, I'll just go first. So one of the things I saw in the past week or two that I thought was pretty awesome was Revenue Cat's hackathon. Have you seen that or any of the details of it?
If not, what is it?
So I don't follow hackathons very often, but this one seems really awesome. I kind of want to submit an app. I have a small idea for it. It's called Revenue Cat Ship-a-Ton 2025, and I guess they did it last year. But what I think is so cool about it is they want you to just make a brand new app, iOS, Android, or Mac between August 1st and September 30th. The rules are pretty simple. You just have to submit an app to the App Store between those dates, and then you can enter it into one of many categories. I won't go over all of them, but there's one, two, three, four. There's 8 categories. The
Okay.
grand prize winner gets $60,000, and if you win any category, the prize is $15,000 plus a Times Square billboard feature,
What?
which I thought was pretty awesome. Then if you get second place, it's $8,000, third place, $4,000. So that's in every category. They
Wow.
even have an extra sponsor boost from One Signal where first place gets 20,000, but for that one you have to be using One Signal for something unique in the app.
Okay. Okay.
But it sounds like really cool because one of the categories was the Revenue Cat. Which one was this? Peace Prize. It's a project that provides the greatest social good. I have an app that I think would work well for that category.
It's not social media, is it?
No.
Good. No, it sounds really cool. Yeah. So do they do this like out of a way to like what's their, kind of like mission in doing this kind of hackathon?
I'm pretty sure it's just to get more notice for Revenue Cat because the only other requirement is that your app has to have a subscription payment that uses Revenue Cat, which most apps
Okay.
need someone to pay for it. So you just
Yeah.
have to make sure Revenue Cat's in it.
Honestly, that makes sense. And like I'm sure for a lot of developers, they'd be happy to use their subscription service. I've definitely heard a ton of people say that Stripe is difficult to work with. So I think you've worked with Stripe before too, so you probably know even better than me. But
Yeah, I mean it's a slightly different niche because Revenue Cat just provides a really nice SDK over both stores for iOS and Android. You could just write it once to have your payment code for
gotcha.
the app stores.
N- Now, does that mean that like you have to do that 30% Apple cut thing?
Well, that just changed. I'm sure you saw the recent injunction or whatever that was done.
Yeah, there was like the court case, but I didn't follow it too closely. Like, what happened?
In the US, I don't know all the specific details, I can't remember, but basically the Epic Game stuff, they said that they didn't follow through correctly in making the App Store more competitive and letting people use outside processors. So what Apple has to do is they have to allow outside payments, but only in the US. This is the most annoying part. Like our app, we already switched it to do web payments, but we have to have a check, and if you're international, it still does the App Store payment.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So that's very cool though. Yeah, Revenue Cat Hackathon. So, and it's like you said, it's the whole month that people have to submit a app to the store.
It's 2 months,
Oh,
August
two
1st to
months.
September 30th. You have any time in there you submit now.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah. Can you submit multiple or?
I don't see why not. I don't see any rule against that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yourself
Reading
a
it.
couple of chances. Like the indie, you'll be like the indie hacker person that creates like 10 projects in 2 months, involved.
If maybe if I didn't have a job.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, well, no, because you're going to use your coding agent to do it. So that's how you're going to get it done.
I mean, that's true. You could just throw up something, but I don't know. I wouldn't be happy with that. It's a little too far.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a good segue into our next topic about agentic coding and all the new stuff that's coming out with that.
Wait, before we go into
Oh
that,
yeah.
I did want to ask you one last thing about it. I wanted to see if you thought my app idea was stupid or not. So I've had this idea for a while, and if I have the time, I'll try to do it. There's this one app called Griffin. You haven't happened to have heard of it by chance.
No, I've not heard of Griffin.
It's essentially an app where you link your bank account, and whenever you buy anything, like say you went to McDonald's, it sees that you went to McDonald's and it will buy $1 of McDonald's stock every week. So wherever you shop, it automatically buys fractional shares. I thought that was really cool, and it made me think, like, even that can still be, like, not good for people who are trying to save seriously, because 'cause you're gonna be super exposed into just a few things that you buy. Like, that's gonna be the only companies you own. So I
Sure.
thought of a slightly different idea where maybe 5 or $10 a year, just trying to help people, and you pretty much just give it your age and an amount you want to invest a week. You just maybe there will be a choice, like, do you wanna be aggressive or not aggressive? And that's it, and it will just buy Vanguard ETFs in a certain, setup that I specify. So, for people who don't really understand anything at all, it just does everything else for you, which is similar to Acorns and some of these others, but I don't know if it's enough different.
I was about to make that comparison to like the Acorns app thing, but not just to put it in a savings account, but your idea is like to help them invest it into like a low cost ETF. And it
Yes,
would
and the
be
other
related.
problem is yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, would it be related to like stuff that they're shopping for? Like, would you try to pick ETFs that are like in the sectors that they're like spending money in, or was that just, or you're not using that idea from Griffin?
No, I just not using that part of Griffin. I just want it to be a very simple, balanced, fun choice that ends up being an aggressive setup of maybe 30% US, 30% international.
Okay.
Probably slightly more than that, and maybe a little bit bonds. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, I think the from the social good perspective, I think the only thing where it might not be good is just the fact that for some people, like if they're in a lot of debt, they shouldn't really be investing yet, because that debt interest rate, especially if it's like high interest rate credit cards and things,
Yeah.
that's going to be way more of a killer for them. I there's a lot of people who are like proud to say like they maxed out their 401k, and then like you find out that they have like credit card debt with like 20% interest, and it's like, okay, well, you're kind of losing out a little bit because of the credit card debt. So I think
Mhm.
that'd be the only thing. It would be like, yeah, if you could somehow like filter for that. But yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You can try to be. You have to do a lot of onboarding for those types of apps to know your customer and all the rules.
Right.
You could add maybe something in there about that to try to really help them. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, cool though.
Cool. Well, yeah, we can move on to what you're going to talk about next with agents and stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I guess if you were gonna do this hackathon, I think like one of the ways that I would definitely be going about it is using a coding agent, specifically because, I mean, depending on how you're doing it, I suppose if you're familiar with React, if you're a web developer, you could use React Native to build one of these apps. And I guess it's, React Native is still good in this space, but maybe you also want to build it with like Swift or something. For me, like, you know, for a developer who knows some languages, but you don't like haven't learned a specific language deeply, I think LMs can be very useful to do that, right? Because you know what you want to do. You can probably even read and understand the code a decent bit without, as long as it's a C kind of based language, you can probably read the code and understand it at a fun, like a surface level. And then you could use the LLM to basically help you code up your idea and iterate on it. Right. But yeah, so like for me, I don't know like what you've tried out, but for me, I've tried out a lot of AI tools over the last like couple of years. I think, my journey, it started with Cursor. And well, I guess originally, I think everybody started with ChatGPT, right? You're pasting stuff into ChatGPT back and forth. But I think Cursor was that first tool that really, for me, accelerated my use of like an agentic workflow. Before even Cursor had made that agent mode their default, I was always using that agent mode for them. And I found it like incredibly useful to like quickly iterate and build things, increase my productivity because it's like, what you want to do, and it's faster to use the agent to help code out some of that stuff and just pull files together and write the code. It's, able to write it faster than you could do it. Um, and I feel like the secret sauce with Cursor was, they indexed your code base and they used like retrieval augmented generation, and they also like had a good like prompt, I think, built in, that would be very good at like looping through and using basically like kind of tool calls and things to do its work. But I guess in the past couple of months or so, it's, things have shifted quite a bit, right? Towards like these more terminal based, like Claude Code, Gemini's CLI, open code from uh is it Dax? Is that who it is? So all these terminal based UIs to do agentic coding workflows instead. I'm currently using Claude Code. I don't know what have you used any of these tools?
Yes, yeah, hold on. I've been writing a few things as we've been talking. So much to bring up. One, it's slightly unrelated, but you mentioned it at the start. You mentioned React Native still being good or not. I was curious, have you used it at all in the past few years?
No, I've not. I've like randomly see is it Evan Bacon? Is that the guy's name from Expo? Yeah, I see his tweets, but that's about it.
The React Native completed a new architecture rendering engine called Fabric. We finally updated our app to it because we've been behind. Supposed to be a lot more performant. We had a lot of crashing issues on Android. I can't
Yeah.
speak to it yet. I have to wait till it's out a few weeks, but it feels better when I run it in production mode on the phone. So that's kind of nice because you don't have to actually change how you code in React Native. It's supposed to just perform better. But back to the back to the AI stuff, I think the biggest mind-blowing thing for me was when I first used Klein. Someone at work actually mentioned it to me before I'd even heard of it. This was probably November or December last year. I can't remember exactly. But when I used Klein and I told it, man, at the time, I guess it was Sonnet 3.5.
Yeah.
I had to do something, and I just couldn't believe that it found in the code exactly where I wanted to add some new form field and did everything, and it was just mind blowing. So
Yeah.
I used that before, long before I ever used Cursor.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember exactly when I started using Cursor. If it was like it might have been at the start of the new year. It might have been November, December timeframe. It's definitely somewhere around there that I started using it. And it's honestly, it's been great for me, but I find myself using it less and less now that I'm using these terminal UI agents. And I trying to like put together why that is, and I think there's a couple of things that have kind of gone into it. One, I mean, there was the pricing change with Cursor, right? I think that's had a big impact. Like you really just do not get very much usage on the, state of the art models from like Anthropic. And for a long time, it feels like the Anthropic models have just been like the leaders in coding.
Every
So
time a benchmark comes out from Google saying theirs is better, immediately you try it and you're like, this is not better.
now, okay, so I agree with you. Like I mean, for a little while, I was trying out 2.5, Gemini 2.5 Pro. And yeah, like there are times where I'm like, okay, it's decent. But then there's times where it's just like, it just can't figure stuff out and it just kind of goes off the rails. And yeah, and I'm just like finding myself going back to Claude.
Yeah, I
So
can give you a good example of one of the issues I had with 2.5. I
yeah,
haven't used it too much because most of the times I use it, I'm not happy with the output. One that I found is in a Python code base with really large files and a lot of imports. I ask it to do something and it will mostly get the task right, but all of a sudden it's just messing up imports in the file. Very weird.
yeah, yep. I've had it where it just fails to edit the file. It'll try to
That's annoying.
edit the file, fail, fail, fail. And then it'll say basically, I'm just going to rewrite the whole, and then it
Yeah, yeah.
hallucinates when it's rewriting the file and then it messes
Yes.
things up. So you're like looking at the diff and you're like, wait, why did this change way up here? Yeah. So I've definitely had that problem before. However, there is one benefit I think to Gemini, and that is that 1 million context window.
Yeah.
And
Well,
really
isn't it two now or
oh,
something
yeah, I
like
think it
that?
is. I think it's doubled now. I think it's even bigger. None of the other model providers have a context window like that. I don't know what the magic sauce is that Google has. And they've shown that like with that 1 million context window, it's still very good at like needle in a haystack. Like it doesn't forget things in that 1 million context. It's very good at keeping it all in memory and using it. And so like literally, I do actually use Gemini for something. And what that is for a tool call for Claude Code. I say to Claude Code, whenever you're working on like a large amount of files, like tokens all at once, use Gemini to summarize those files, like put it all into Gemini's context, prompt it to like get all that data into context and then summarize it for your usage. And it basically does use Gemini as like a little sub agent tool call to do that work so that it can better like do its thing. And it's really only a problem if you're working on bigger code bases. But at work, a lot of the code bases that I work on are fairly large in size. Like
Mhm.
monorepos, and there's just a lot of code, a lot of tokens in there. So that is the one use case that I've really found for Gemini so far.
I've heard some people talk about doing that. I'm curious, how exactly are you having this set up? Can you describe it? Like, are you doing this in Cloud Code, and how exactly are you registering a way to do this?
Yeah, so you can make it an allowed tool call, right? So you can say, hey, you're allowed to run bash, Gemini, and star after it.
Makes
So
sense.
whatever you want to run for that. And then you include in either your Claude MD file or like, some of your prompt that you're literally writing, like just tell it to use Gemini to do this thing and then use that as an input. A lot of times is when you're in the plan mode of Claude Code, which I think is Shift. No, it's not Shift.
Yeah, Shift tab, yeah,
Oh, it is
that's what
Shift
it
tab.
is.
Yeah, yeah. I always forget which one it is that enters you into plan mode. But yeah, so you're in plan mode, and that's a lot of times where I'll use it. I'll say like use Gemini to like grab this up. Also, you can use Gemini to like find relevant files, and I'll actually use like the Flash model for that because it's just cheaper, right? Like Pro is actually can cost you a couple of bucks if you're trying to go through a huge code base and find files. So like
Now I have
Fluentd.
another question before you move on. You're saying you use Flash. You're doing this with the Gemini CLI, the one that came out a few weeks ago?
Yes, the Gemini CLI tool. So their terminal UI.
Well, yes. Now I'm curious, why not log in with your personal and then you don't have to pay anything right now, right?
Yeah, but you only get like I mean, you can do that. Absolutely. You get like 1,000 requests or something. Um, but like if you're using it out beyond that, then it starts costing money. So
Yeah, I think it's 1,000 per day though. I'd be curious if you're actually hitting those limits, but if you have a company paying, I guess it doesn't matter.
yeah, maybe I'm just being lazy and I'm like, all right, I already have a Gemini CLI keys. Just use it and then try not to have it cost too much. But I actually ran up a bill of $40 the other day and did not mean to, but like so I was just trying out Gemini by itself, right, to do a task that required a lot of context. And I had it in like the sort of like the YOLO mode, like it's just like doing things. And then I was in another tab working with Claude Code on another Git repository that I had checked out and working with that. And I kind of forgot about the I forgot about the Gemini CLI that was running. And when I went back to that tab, it had been looping the
Oh
same
no.
exact thing for like 20 minutes and it burned through like 40 million tokens. I was like, my gosh. And that is when I stopped using Gemini. So, like, for a tool call for Claude Code. Oh, yeah. I don't even know what happened. It must have compacted its context window because it said like, oh, it's got like 95% context or
Yeah, and then
something.
it
So,
just confuses itself.
yeah. Yeah. Just depth spiraled. And I was like, okay, honestly, that if there's one feature request that I have for these terminal UIs, it is like somehow like recognize you are making the same exact like turns over and over again and to just stop, because and it's interesting, but in a lot of the like there's the beast mode prompt. Have you seen that prompt before?
No, I haven't.
So OpenCode, which is the open source terminal UI version of like this Claude Code or Gemini CLI or whatever. OpenCode basically had a PR merged, and the PR was like add the beast mode prompt to OpenAI. And Dax has been tweeting about it, but he said that like after this prompt got merged and they started using it for OpenAI, GPT 4.1 has become so much better at agentic coding. And basically, he was tweeting out and he was saying, like, this is actually making me go back to think like prompt engineering is actually kind of important because I'm shocked, he said, like how much better GPT 4.1 got at agentic coding tasks after this system prompt was merged in. And that beast mode prompt, you can go and look at it. It's, in their open source repo. If you go to like their pull request tab for open code and search like beast, there's like one closed PR in there. You can go read it if you want. But this is like essentially just lays out like system prompt for like how do you do agentic coding, use markdown, use lists, plan your stuff out, all this stuff, search for information before you code stuff. And part of that instruction set is no matter what you do not stop until you've completed the task. And it's like it says that instruction multiple times in that prompt. Like it's basically trying to stop the model from pausing and like telling the user, like, okay, I've finished when you've not really finished, you know, because it can happen a
Yeah.
lot with these models is that they kind of get like lazy and they don't really complete the task. Like they do the first couple of ones and then they turn it back to the user